Alright, this video is going to talk to you about building this little trestle table. This is construction 1130, solid stock construction. So after you've completed your questions, then you will go on to your drafting, and you'll draft this, and then you'll also draft this one. After that's done, then it's time to start your milling, and we're going to start by milling material for your table legs. And we're going to make a piece that's big enough to get 2 legs out of. Okay, so let's go select some material and we'll start milling. Okay, so just go grab yourself a 2x4. So grab that from the material storage. So you're going to grab a 2x4, and it's not going to look very nice, but eventually it's going to end up as this table. So make sure you have watched the foolproof method of milling, and then we're going to take you through the process to mill up the legs for this. So first things first is we will find the crown down this side. I'm looking from this corner all the way down to the far corner. And this side is my crown. It means it comes out. It's got a bend in it. So then what you want to do is mark that with that arrow, and that's the industry standard. Here, I'll do that darker with a heavier pen so you can see it. You can do it just in pencil, however. So this is pointing towards the crown. That's the part that's going to go against the fence. Then we have to look at it on edge, and we have to find the surface that will sit kind of like a rocking chair. So we look down it, and this is the part that's going to be more like a rocking chair. Okay, so this is going like that. So this side goes up. Okay, so this is the concave side. All right, well, let's go over to the miter saw and we'll get that all organized. All right, so if you're unsure of the crook and crown and which side rocks and which one's concave and which one's convex, you don't have to worry about remembering all those names. Come over here and look at this example. So this one, you can see the crown. It's pretty easy to spot the crown on this one. Okay, and the opposite of the crown is the crook. Okay, so that establishes our edges. And then to find out which one rocks, like a rocking chair, ideally you would look down it like so, and you can see that this is your convex, this is your concave. So if we were cutting this piece, we would have our crown, which is marked with the arrow, which you will do, against the fence, and we will have the rocker part down. Now this is a pretty extreme example of it. Yours will be more subtle, but you'll get a better eye for it. But this is really important so you don't have kickback on the saw. Okay, so let's get that one up out of the way. And this is usually stored here so you can refer to it. Now we're cutting this to 640 mils, I believe. So I want this side up, but remember, I have to find out where my crown is. My crown's right there. So I will mark it on this side. And we mark it, and you mark your X. And make sure you always double check your measurements in the booklet so you're getting the right, cutting things the right size. All right, so our crown, which is marked on the other surface, but that is our crown. That has to go tight against the fence. And again, we're going to line up your miter saw, in this case, so that this edge of the blade is on your line. Okay, so that's why we have that little X there, and that X is the part, we don't care how long that is. We didn't measure that, we measured this. This is the part we want. Okay, so we're going to cut this stuff fairly slow. Left hand like this, and left hand is pushing the piece against the fence and also down flat onto the table. Okay, don't have your thumb out, that's how you can cut your thumb off. Keep your thumb tucked in and just put some pressure down with this part of your hand. We're lined up, bring the blade so that basically the bottom of the blade is in front of this front edge. Start it, all the way down, all the way back. Wait for it to stop, and then we have our piece that we're going to start milling. So that's it for right now. All right, so we're going to start by using the 8-inch jointer, and we are going to start milling this piece of material. Make sure you've gone over foolproof method of milling and watched the video. This is a really important step for this whole project, because it's all about milling, and for most of the projects that you'll do in the future. All right, so first of all, we want to find our concave surface, which is this side, and we're going to put lines across it. And I'll use felt pen, you can just use pencil. Go all the way across. And this is going to help to tell us when it's completely flat, which is what we're trying to do, is get this surface totally flat. They don't grow perfectly straight trees, unfortunately. Okay, so we have those lines. When those lines are removed, that's when we know the piece is flat. So we have to adjust the fence over. So back here is the lock. All you do, push that down, 2 hands, move it over, and you want to have it so that you have an extra about centimeter just of blade exposed. You don't want it way out here, else then you end up with a whole bunch of blade exposed, and that's more to get hurt on. So bring it like so, about there, lock it back in place, put the guard back, and in this case we're going to use the push paddle at the front and the wide push stick at the back. So hook that on like so, turn it on, and you don't have to squeeze the life out of it, but keep pressure down on it. And if it catches, just back it up and do it again. You hear it cutting? Now it's not cutting. Okay, now it's going to cut again. And you'll see what happens. We've taken the lines will be removed mainly from up here and back here. So if we look at that, you can see we've flattened it here. It didn't flatten here because it didn't touch the blade, and it flattened a little back here. So we give it another pass. And I don't think we're quite there yet. Oh, we're better, but we still have a few lines here, so probably this next pass will take care of it. Check it, and there we go. That's perfectly flat on this surface. That's where we need to start from. All right, so we flattened the one surface. Now we'll go over to the thickness planer, and we'll plane this surface perfectly parallel to this bottom surface. So let's go over to the thickness planer. All right, so I'm typically going to ask you 2 questions on whether you've set up correctly. I'm going to ask you how thick your material is exactly. Not, it's sort of like 3 centimeters, Mr. Isaac. No, you have to tell me what it is. So this one is 3.5 centimeters. Okay? Now, on this tool, we have to err to the side of caution. If this is 3.5, we have to set this to 3.8. So, our ruler's right here, so you have to kneel down. And there's 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters, 3.5, 4, there's 3.8 right there. Now again, we want to plane this down, and we want to keep it as thick as possible. So ideally, well, when you're doing this, you will have 4 pieces of this, okay, for your legs. Okay, not just one. I'm just going to show you one. But what we're doing here, you would do all 4 pieces. So if I set this to 38, I send all 4 pieces through at 38. Then I would adjust it half a turn, and I'd send all 4 pieces through until the lines are off, all of them. Okay, so this one has a little reset, so just hold down here for a moment, a few seconds, then push the green. There we go. Probably not much will happen on the first pass, maybe 2 passes. Okay, so it's not even taking itself in on its own, so we use the push stick, push it through, go retrieve it. Now, go half a turn clockwise. So right there, put it through again, it's probably going to grab it, pull it through there. You know we're getting closer to the cutter head. Another half turn, it still hasn't cut anything, but it's getting closer. Might hit a high spot here, not quite. And this is just the process you go through. It's how we adjust the tool. You can see all the sawdust coming back at you. If that's the case, make sure you turn the dust collector on. I just don't have it on, or else I'd have to shout over top of it during the video. So you can see we took some of the lines off, but not all of them, so we're still not quite flat. Do another half turn clockwise. Put it through. Still have to go a little bit more. Another half turn. And remember, you'd be doing this with all of your pieces, not just one at a time. All four together. And you can see here, now we have it. You can see we now have it flat. There are no lines on it any longer, which means this has all been planed down. And these two surfaces are perfectly parallel to each other. Now, we're going to go back. We'll use the 6-inch jointer this time just to show you a different one. And we're now going to straighten and make the edges parallel to each other. Okay, so that step 1 of foolproof method of milling is finished. Now we're going to do step 2. So we'll go over here to the 6-inch jointer. So what we want to look for here is our crook. Okay, and it's on the poster. Okay, so if you have trouble remembering what your crook is, it is the concave edge. This one is the concave edge, so I'll put marks all along there again, all the way across. Don't go diagonal like this or like this. That doesn't work. All the way across. And that'll give you a true indication of when it's straight. Now, we have to adjust this one. This one adjusts a little bit differently. Just turn this lock at the back, just one turn. You'll feel it loosen off. 2 hands, makes that lovely sound. Go to about there, so we have just about a centimeter extra blade exposed. Tighten that back up. If it keeps doing that, just reach underneath. There's a little nut underneath that has to be held on to. All right, grab your skinny push stick and your push paddle. Now, the push paddle in this case is going to push your material tight against the fence. Okay, you don't have to worry about pushing it down onto the table. We're referencing our nice straight surface against the fence, and we'll end up with perfect 90-degree angle down here in this transition area. And that's what we're looking for. So, turn it on. Push paddle, tight up against there. Push stick at the back, and we'll just run it through. Keep your left hand right there. Okay, and run it all the way through. It sounded like it was engaged the whole way. We'll take a look. And we've got a little remnant piece there. So we'll do one more pass. Make sure it's perfect. And again, with the dust collector on, you won't get this sawdust kicking back at you. All right, so now we have our perfectly straight edge. Now we're going to make this edge parallel to this edge that we just jointed. So we'll go over to the table saw and we'll finish off step 2, prepare the edges. All right, so now we're going to rip this to 80 mils. So first thing you want to do, set the fence. You want the gullet, which is this groove basically. You want that 3 millimeters above the surface of the material. So we'll put it like that. Loosen off the lock nut and raise that up. Move that over so I can see it a little better. And so look from that side, and you don't have to get a ruler out, just estimate about 3 millimeters. That's good. Tighten the lock back up. Drop your guard down. Set your fence to 80 mils. Okay, so just tap it over. Take it right to 80 and lock it in place. Grab your push stick. Now, just like ripping anything on here, your left hand, your fingers are going to go down onto the table saw. Your fingers are going to push the piece tight against the fence, and your thumb is going to keep it flat to prevent that from happening. Okay, in this case, it's a little long to start with the push stick because this will happen. So I've set the push stick right there so it's easy to grab. Now, when I go to grab that push stick, I have to use a lot of pressure with my left hand so that that piece doesn't come shooting back. You cannot let go of this piece at all until it gets past here on the table saw. It's a 5 horsepower motor. It'll kick pieces back, and hate to tell you, it probably ends up with a trip to the hospital. All right, so left hand pushing against the board, keeping it tight against the fence, thumb holding it down. Have your push stick handy. All right, so start feeding it in. Now squeeze hard with the left hand, grab the push stick, put the push stick on. Run it all the way through to about there. Shut it off, wait for it to stop. There we go. And pull your pieces out. So again, you would do that 4 times over to get all your pieces cut and milled. So that's the end of step 2 of foolproof method. Now the last thing we have to do is step 3. So in this case, we're going to leave it at our rough length, because we're going to be gluing all 4 of these pieces together, and we'll trim them to the final length once they're all glued together. So that piece is milled as far as we have to take it until we go on to the next step. So that's it. So now you have all 4 pieces milled, so you've done the edges, you've done the surfaces, and the lengths can stay rough right now. So first thing I always do is I'll just lay them down. I'll put the nicer side up typically. I think that one's nicer. This one has a knot hole. Oh, actually it'll be hidden, but we wouldn't want this. That wouldn't make for a very good good leg. We'll put it to the bad side. So once you do that, then you want to look at the growth rings on the end. So here, we'll turn that one around so it's easier to see. And you can see that the growth rings in this case go like that. So let's call that a frown. That's basically frowning. That one's frowning. This one's smiling. And this one's definitely frowning. So we have to alternate the grain direction. So if we have a frown, we need a smile. Here we have 2 frowns. That's not good. So let's see if we flip that one over. It's still a nice piece. So now we have frown, smile. Oh, did that incorrectly. Yeah, frown, smile, smile. So that's what we need. Okay, that's your first step. Because your next step is you want to always get these back together the same way. So we put on what's called the carpenter's triangle. The carpenter triangle doesn't have to be drawn with a ruler. It's just touching all 4 pieces. So we go like this. And the reason we do that is so that when we're doing things, we don't get that set up. Okay, we want to keep everything coordinated, because if we did that, then we have 2 smiles in a row, and this thing would cup after it's glued. So back in there. It's looking pretty good. This is where you check. Just hold it together, and you should have you can live with small gaps like that. But if that gap was any bigger than that, so if it was like that, we would have to rejoint both of these pieces, just on this edge and this edge. In this case, we don't have to do it. But if that happens to you, just go back to the jointer, rejoint this edge and this edge, put them back together, and they'll probably come together nicely. So this one looks fine, it's good to go. So after you've marked your triangle, then you want to mark where the biscuits are going. And the biscuits are these little guys, and they are going to help in the alignment of this piece of material. Because these are going to, when we glue them, they're going to, if we didn't use the biscuits, they would like to slide up and down and left to right. We want them to end up pretty close at the ends, but we want them really nice and flat. That's why we planed all 4 of these together, so that they were all the exact same thickness. So I want you to mark that in about, what did I say here, about 5 inches in. And this doesn't have to be done terribly accurate either. So there's my 5 inches. Okay, so right there, right there, right there. And you'll notice that they're spanning, because we're going to cut half the biscuit slot in here and half the biscuit is slot in there, and they have to be aligned. So I'll do this one. There's 5 inches. 5, 5, 5. All right. And then we're going to get set up, and we're going to show you how to cut biscuit slots so that we can insert these in between each piece of material. All right. and that's where we want to get to, right there. All right, so I've grabbed my biscuit joiner. It's all nicely wrapped up. That's nice. That's the way we should leave the tools. We'll unwind that. That's ready to go. I've got an extension cord, and I need a couple of clamps. So, first thing we need to do is we need to establish in between the surfaces the center, okay, between these two. So I'll do that in felt pen so you can see. So well, we actually don't have to be exact as long as we're the same. So 34 mils, so we can go about 17 mils. Then draw a line there. You only have to do this in one place because this one's going to be in exactly the same spot up and down. So once we set the tool to this one, we're good to go. So what we're going to do, we'll clamp this down. When you clamp this down, make sure the edge is hanging over a little bit. Okay, and you'll see why here in a moment. So I'll throw a couple of clamps on there. Put the clamps right near the end so they don't get in the way. Then, with your biscuit joiner unplugged, loosen off the lock nut, and then that allows that fence to go up and down. And what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and get this red line here, which is right where the blade is. We're going to get this red line aligned with our mark over here on the edge. So I'm going to put it down, and I'm going to adjust the little ratchet here, and we're going to go down till those marks align right there. Then I'm going to tighten up the star knob, and then our height is set. So when I go to cut, I don't have to worry about the height anymore. I want to make sure that this indicator lines up with my mark here, my 5-inch mark. All right, so we'll plug that in. Always adjust your tools with them unplugged. All right, so got this overhanging. Now I want to line this one up first. And then this part here, just put your thumb down there, and that's kind of just to prevent this from happening or this from happening. It's just more of a feel thing. I've got my mark lined up left and right. I'm just gonna put my thumb there to make sure everything's nice and flat. The trigger on this biscuit joiner is at the back, so you push that in, turn it on, and then go forward. So with it running, all you're going to do, make sure it's flat, turn it on, push it in, it'll stop, then let it come back out. And then you will be left with a biscuit slot over here, or half of a biscuit slot, and that's where that's going to fit in, like so. So I'll do a couple more here so you get a feel for it. So now I'll do this one, get it lined up, turn it on. Take your clamps off, and then we'll grab the next one, and I'll just show you one more. So that one we can put over here. This one, again, keep your marks up as well. Okay, don't flip this over, that changes everything. Just keep it like so. Clamp that on. Don't adjust the biscuit joiner or anything like that. It's set, it's going to do all of these pieces. That up. Put your biscuit joiner in place. Make sure it's sitting flat. Turn it on. Move it over to here. Okay, and then we go through cutting all of these without changing anything other than the edge of the board that we're doing. I'll do those, and then we'll go over and we'll glue it up. Okay, now make sure you do your gluing laminations on the glue table. This has a different surface on it, and the glue, once it dries, peels off here really easy so we don't damage our workbenches. So first thing you want to do, try and grab 3 clamps of the same length, either 3-footers or 4-footers. This is a small one, let's try and use 3-footers. Put 2 down, open them up a little bit, and make sure they're sitting flat. Don't have them hanging over the edge. They want to sit flat. Have another 3-footer, elusive 3-footer, there's one. Put this one down, flat. Back off your thread so you have lots of thread. Okay, so you want to have this dog all the way back here. You don't want it wound way out here, or else you have very little thread to work with, and then you can't get it any tighter than that. So back that all the way off. Now, the pipe clamps are going to be about where your biscuit joints are. Okay, so I just got lucky, but they're right on. So just like so, like so, like so, and like so. Once you get to that point, we want to do a dry setup. So spread these all out, let's put biscuits in. What can happen is sometimes you don't cut the biscuit slot deep enough, and the biscuit won't go all the way in. And then we have problems. All right, so our dry setup with the clamps, just to make sure everything's going to go together right. Don't worry too much about the length. Remember that it's oversized in length and width right now. Close that. Yeah, everything's closing up nicely. It's sitting flat. That's what we're looking for. So back your clamps off. And what we're going to do is we're now going to flip these over or up so that your triangle is facing you. Okay, so like that. And this one, take the biscuits out. There. So I'll reverse this just so you can see it a little easier. So I have the triangle facing me, and that's fairly important. Just keep track of which direction we're gonna drop everything. So again, do it that way. What I like to do, I bring these close. This one I can keep down actually, because the glue from this one, when I drop it, the glue is going to transfer onto that one. When I glue this one, it's going to transfer onto that edge. And when I glue this, when I drop it down, it transfers onto that edge. So I just have to glue these 3 top edges. Got my biscuits ready. And take a bead of glue. Now we do want to get glue into the biscuit slot. We don't have to put a whole bunch, but about the, I don't know, about the size of a dime. Now, once you're gluing, remember you have to work fast, and you have to get kind of good at estimating. I think I'm a little light, but I can always add more. So, this is the best glue spreader ever designed. Okay, we each have one. Okay, so take it, use your finger, and start spreading the glue. And you have to work fast, so try and go diagonal like this, and it covers a lot of area fairly quickly. I don't mind if you lobby some of your friends to get some help with this, because remember, time is of the essence. You want to get this done pretty darn quick. Oh, my glue bottle's plugging up here on me. Of course, always happens in videos. So just bear with me for a sec. 2.5-inch screw, put it in there. Pull the little nib of glue out. It's going to come out. It's going to be stubborn. Take the cap off. And pull that out of there. Sometimes you just have to play around with it. It doesn't always cooperate. This is a big error on my part. Remember, that glue's drying. It doesn't care if this thing's plugged up, and it's still plugged up. So you just have to work at it. Try and work fast. Oh yeah, there we go. We got it. Okay, so we have glue again. But you can see the glue's already drying, so it just shows you have to work fast. So now I have to work real fast because I wasted time getting that unplugged. So, always seems like things go wrong when you're gluing. I'm not sure why, it just does. So you have to kind of plan for it. I don't have a very good plan other than working faster. All right, so we don't have any dry areas. We have good glue surface. Everything's covered, about the same thickness, like so. A little bit more over there. There we go. Now take your biscuits, put them in. Then on top of each biscuit, put a drop of glue, again about the size of a dime. So, glue, glue, glue. All right, take it, drop it down. Don't worry about squeezing it together, the clamps will do that. There we go, bring this all forward. Make sure you keep your clamps nice and straight and flat. Move that, move that, start tightening it up. And you do want squeeze out, that's a good thing. It means you haven't starved the joint, and it means that your glue has not dried. Push down, make sure it goes down flat against the pipe, and then the same with this one. Again, if you need a helper, go ask somebody really nicely. And then, after you've done that, look underneath it and see that everything's sitting nice and flat, so that you don't have a gap between the pipe and the bottom of your lamination. Okay, and the glue dripping out is fine, that's good. Once you get it like that, then grab another 3-foot clamp and you want to put it across the top, like so. Now it seems odd, but I don't want you to rest it down on the wood. You want to elevate it just a little bit. Okay, so it doesn't mess with the glue. And you clamp that on, and you don't have to reef on these, just snug. And that's pretty much it. In about 15 minutes, I always like to write down the time. So in about 15 minutes, we're going to screw this, or scrape this, 9:45. So we're going to come and scrape this off at about 10 o'clock. All right, and we'll scrape the top and we'll scrape the bottom. There you go. That's all there is to the lamination. All right, so we've scraped our panel, and it's now time to thickness plane it down so we have a nice panel to work from to make our legs. First thing is, measure the thickness. I have 35 mils, therefore I want to set this to 38 mils. So over here, set it at 38, right there. Put your lines across. Again, I'll use felt so you can see it, because we want to keep this as thick as possible. Make sure it's scraped really well, and I want to check this before you put it through the planer. Okay, if you're cutting some of the high spots, you can see it. So another half a turn, send it through again. Sometimes you have to give it some encouragement. There, so 2 passes and it's perfectly flat on this side. Now we want to do the other side. So same thing. Some lines on, because there's nothing to reference off of. So another half turn. Put it through. Now both sides are perfectly flat, and we can continue on with the process of cutting 2 pieces for our legs. So we'll go over to the table saw for this. All right, so now we want to rip your panel to the width of your legs. So the width of your legs for the table are going to be 230 mils. So again, you don't have to make any lines on your panel. Just come over here, set your saw to 230 mils or 2.3 or 20.3 centimeters, and we will get that cut. So the fence is set. One thing we have to do, we have to set the blade height. Oh yeah, somebody using it earlier had it really high. So we have to set that so that the gullet is about 3 millimeters over top of this surface. So loosen off the lock nut. Do about there is good. About 3 millimeters from the gullet to the top of the surface that you're cutting. Drop your guard down. And no different than any of your other cuts. Left hand is stationary right here. Fingers are pushing against the fence and thumb is holding down to prevent that from happening. Now this one we will need to use a push stick, so make sure you have your push stick standing up so it's easy to grab. Turn your saw on and let's cut. Left hand, thumb, start cutting. Now when I go to reach for the push stick, squeeze real hard with the left hand, put the push stick roughly in the middle, push it all the way through. Now in this case, the way the panel glued up, we end up having quite a bit of extra material. Hang on to this, it's already milled. You can see where our biscuits went in actually, so that's kind of neat. And don't worry about it being on here. I don't get too worried about that in grade 10. If we see the biscuit joints on the side, that's not the end of the world. Okay, so we've got cut to width, now we have to cut it to length. So hang on to this, keep it with your material. Okay, so now we have our panel cut to width. Now we have to cut to length, and our length is 285 mils. So even before we do any measuring, we want to just cut off one end so that it's nice and straight. We don't want it random like this. So we don't have to make any marks. All we're going to do, we're going to come over here, put this tight against the crosscut sled fence, and slide it over until this dark line right here, this groove, is covered. Once that's covered, like that, then when we cut, we'll end up with a nice straight edge. So, well, one thing I forgot to do is check the blade height. Oh, it's a little low, so we'll raise that up so that the gullet's about 3 mils out. About there is good. Cover that groove up. Turn the saw on. Right hand, left hand, and slowly cut through until you just get through your wood. Stop there, wait for the blade to entirely stop. That's where you have to be patient, which I know you all are. So now we went from a real rough end, that's random, to a nice straight end. So we're going to measure from that end over. So we're going to measure 285 mils. So again, mark on the edge. It'll be a lot easier for you to line up. So go to 285, right there. Grab your square. Make a nice square line. Put an X on the waist side. In this case isn't waist, but it's our next cut. Tight against the fence. Now, the reason you want this mark on this edge is so you can line it up with the edge of your blade. So you want to get it lined up just like that, and you have to kind of look through the plexiglass so that you can see that. Back it up so it's not touching. Let's get this stuff out of the road. Don't have any binding issues. Turn it on. Right hand, left hand. Wait for it to stop, and then we have made one blank to make our legs. Now I'll show you the next cross cut cross here. I'll show that to you on the miter saw, but since we're here, I might as well mark it at 285. Put my little X, and then we can go over to the miter saw and we'll cut it on the miter saw. All right, so we're just going to show you just how to cross cut this part on the miter saw. You could have done these both on the miter saw, or you could have done them both on the crosscut sled, either or. So I'm lined up, pull your saw back, start it, all the way down, all the way back. You're binding a little bit, slow down. When you hear a saw binding like that or laboring, just slow down, give it a little bit more time to cut. I was perhaps a little fast there. There you go, and then there's our second panel. All right, so now it's time to lay out the panels so we know where to cut them, or cut the shape. So you've already done this on a drafting plate. That was kind of your dry run. Now you're going to do it on the panel. So now you're going to actually use these measurements: 230, 285, 45, 45 degree radius, or 45 mil radius, and 60 mils here. So let's get right to it. I'm just going to start here, and I'm going to measure down 60 mils, and I'm basically going to make a rectangle in here that's really nice. 60 mils. Make a square line across. Measure up 60 mils. Use your square to make that line nice and across there. Now I want to measure out 45 millimeters. So right there and right up there. Connect those two. Okay, and we can do that on the other side too real quick. So down 60. Depending on your math, you can go up 60. That along there. That along there. In 45 mils. In 45 mils. Connect those two. All right, so we'll start with those two rectangles. Then you have to grab the compass and you have to set it to 45 mil radius. So use a pencil, a wood pencil. Mechanical pencils don't fit in here. And if either of these little screws ever come out, just stop what you're doing and find them, that one or that one. Because if they're lost, these compasses are basically useless. So the way I like to do it is I'll put the pencil on 1 centimeter and I'll go to 55. And then you'll see it's just a little easier to set up. Tighten that in place, and then I'll just double check. Yep, I'm at 45 mils. Okay, so now what you want to do is you want to draw your radius right in here. So what you have to do, put your pencil right on this line down here, then the point of your compass, just come in a couple of mils, because we can't put it right on the edge or it's going to fall off. So we want to put it in just a couple of mils, push it in a little bit. Lean your compass in the direction you're drawing and draw your arc right to there. Okay, so again, get your pencil on the line, get your center point just a couple of mils in, lean your compass in the direction you're traveling, like so. Come over here, we'll do the same thing. There's that arc, and then over here, same thing. Oops. Just like that. And so that is the shapes that we're going to cut out on the bandsaw. So we'll mark the other one and then we'll get set up on the bandsaw to cut some relief cuts and then cut the arcs. All right, now that you're at the bandsaw, let's raise the guard to the right height. So I'll loosen off the lock and we'll come up to about there, tighten the lock back in place. All right, now before you start cutting these arcs, I want you to put relief cuts in. And relief cuts give the blade relief so that it doesn't break and it doesn't have to work too hard. So relief cuts come in kind of perpendicular to your object line. So, like so, you want them about 1 centimeter apart, and you don't want them to quite touch your object line. You want to be 1 mil or 2 away from your object line. And you just really have to do it on the curve. You don't have to do it on this straight part. Okay, so I'll draw a bunch of those in. And again, if you wanted, I could come in like this as well. And just don't cut in too far here, else then you'll see your cut on your finished product. All right, so we'll cut some relief cuts first, then we'll cut our arc. In just about to the line, just about to your object line, but not touching it. And you'll see why momentarily. And you see I'm not exactly on my line. They're just, my relief cut lines are just kind of a ballpark. Okay, and then we'll do this side over here. Now this one's a little too wide right here, so I'm going to put another one right in there. And it's really good to draw lines If you don't, you end up running into a variety of problems. Okay, so I have my relief cuts in. Now I'm going to flip this around. You're going to actually see that the arc is starting to be formed already. So if you were to go from point to point to point, you're starting to see the arc. And that's basically the way that we're going to cut it. We're going to cut it in a bunch of line segments. So we're basically going to cut from here down to the bottom of this cut. Then from the bottom of this cut to the bottom of this cut. And so on all the way around. And then I'll show you some stuff in here. So, now turn it a little bit. Now turn it a little bit. Right to the bottom of that line. And this one I might draw a line on because I think I'm going to go a little crooked on it. That one. And then that one. And you can see that you don't have a beautiful shape here yet, but we're going to sand that down. So we saved the line and we will sand that to make it a perfect shape. So I'll just do the other side real quick here. Alright, so there are the arcs cut. Now we have to get rid of all this. That's real easy. We just come over here and we'll gradually come down to this line all the way across. Alright, here's straight line. Try and do this one really nice and straight because we don't have anything that sands in there other than hands, and that's a lot of sanding. There we go. And here we can take this little bit out over here too. So that's basically what you want to get it to. You can see your line all the way, your shape line all the way, that's good. And we can see our shape line down here, and that's really important because when we sand, we want to get rid of all these ugly bandsaw marks that are going across. So we'll go over to the spindle sander and we'll take care of that right now.